All right, in this lesson, we're going to go over how to add and subtract radicals. So let's go ahead and get started. So here we see, since we're working with adding and subtracting radicals, our essential question, not essential, that's not a word. Our essential question is going to be, how can I add and subtract radical expressions? Can I add and subtract radical expressions? All right. And with that, we're going to get going. We're going to be using a lot of the same techniques and skills that we've used in the last couple of lessons with prime factorization and whatnot. Okay, so keep that in mind as we move forward. So moving right along, it says when you are adding or subtracting radicals, the indices it's just index plural. So when your index is going to be 2 or 3 most of the time dealing with what we're doing. But sometimes you have different ones. In these cases, it will usually be 2 or 3. Indices is just plural for index. Our indices must be the same, and our radicands are a number that's going to be under the radical. Our radicands must also be the same. Okay, our indices must be the same, and our radicands must be the same. The number in the house must be the same, and the number on the porch. Those both need to be the same. All right. And then in other words, you cannot, and let me change this to red so that way, actually I want that one red. You cannot add or subtract a square root and a cube root. And you cannot add or subtract the square root of 2 and the square root of 3. And that could be any two numbers there. That could be 8 and 10 or 4 and 7 or anything like that. Probably not 4 because 4 is a perfect square. But you have to make sure those indices are the same and those radicands are the same. And that's what this is kind of stuff I was talking about when we needed those vocab words. Here's where it's coming in incredibly important. Okay. So as long as both the radicals have the same index, you have to simplify the radicals first. And that's everything we've just done the last couple of days. Simplify first. Then you will add or subtract the coefficients. Those are just going to be the numbers on the outside. And keep the radicals or the radicands the same, okay? They're kind of acting as how we see variables act with some things. That's kind of how they're acting in this case. So let's look at a couple of examples. Example number 1, we have 3 times the square root of 2 plus 5 times the square root of 2 plus 4 times the square root of 3. All right, when we look at these, we don't see anything written out on this porch. And so since nothing is written, this index is 2, okay? And anytime we don't see anything written, it's always going to be 2. It's always going to be 2. Always. And then when we look some more, we see that this has the same radicand and these two have similar radicands. So the way we are going to do this is we're going to add up the coefficients 3 plus this 5. These two things here, let's use some colors. Add that, and our pinks stay the same. So we do 3 plus 5. And then on the outside, we keep that radical the same, square root of 2. And then since this 4 square root of 3 has a different radicand altogether, that just stays and tags along. Plus 4 square root of, and we're going to actually simplify. 3 plus 5 gives us an 8. Square root of 2 plus 4 square root of 3. Okay, so it's not too bad. We're going to look for similar radicands and similar indices going through this entire process. So when we get to this next example, we see that we have 4 times the square root of 6 minus 3 times the cube root of 6 plus 2 times the square root of 6. Now, the first thing that pops out to me is that we have a cube root here, but on the other two, we have a square root. And so I know that this here, since it's a cubed root, I'm going to keep that sign with it. Since this is a cubed root, it's not going to be included in our operations, okay? So 4 times the square root of 6 plus 2 times the square root of 6, all right? That's what we have. We're going to add those coefficients, 4 plus 2. You know what? Let me keep my colors the same. Red. All right, we're going to have 4 plus 2, and I get that from here and here. And then I keep that square root of 6 right there with it. And then I'm going to bring down this minus 3 cube root of 6. And then finally, I'm going to just kind of simplify, clean everything up. My 4 plus 2 is going to give me 8, or I'm sorry, 6. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 square root of 6 minus 3 cube root of 6, okay? So these indices are becoming really, really, really important with these. They were important with the multiplying, and we see that they're really important here with these adding and subtracting problems as well. All right, and then we're going to look at another example, okay? In this number 3, and let me zoom in just a wee bit. All right, in this next example, number 3, we see that we've got 3 different radicands. So before we can move on, we need to kind of simplify. All right. So this 2, or this square root of 8, we can simplify this. That's going to have a 1 and an 8. What can go into 8 evenly? 2 can. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 2 goes into 2, or into 4 2 times. And then we've got 2 goes into 2 1 time. And there we go. We've got a pair of 2s here. And in this step, I'm kind of shortcutting a little bit since I don't have a ton of space to write these steps out multiple times. We've got a pair of 2s here, so these are going to come out, and we have this 2 and this 1 left over. So we have this 5 already out here times my 2 that I just pulled out. And then I have my 2 times my 1 on the inside, but I don't need to write 2 times 1 because we know that's just going to be 2. So this is what I get for this first portion here. This 5 times 2, square root of 2, that's going to give me 10, square root of 2. And then I got to do the same thing with this next term, this 3 square root of 18. I need to check out what that's going to be what's going to be happening with that as well. So now I need to go through the same process I just did before. Draw my line and go through my prime factorization. I have a 1 and an 18 to start off with. And then what goes into 18 evenly? I think 3 is the biggest we can think of for this one. So we're going to do 3 and 6. And then what goes into 6? 3 goes in twice. Then what goes into 2? 2 goes into 2 once. And we have this 3 square root of 2. All right, so I'm kind of taking a little bit of a shortcut and not rewriting my radical just to save a little space. This 3 is my pair. It's going to come out. Then I have a 2 left. And don't forget, you got to multiply this negative 3 going on. And then we do negative 3 times 3. It's going to be a negative 9. Square root of 2. And then finally, we have this plain square root of 3 minus square root of 3. All right, and so what we're working with after simplifying everything, it's going to be this portion here. We've got 10 square root of 2 minus 9 square root of 2 minus 3. And since we've got this square root of 2 here, the square root of 2 here, but then we get this square root of 3, we can't include this in our operation. So instead, what we're going to do, kind of ignore it for now, and then do 10 minus 9. This 10 minus 9, let's go ahead and use some different colors. 10 minus 9, and we end up with the 10 minus 9 square root of 2 all minus the square root of 3. But then we're not just going to leave it like that, because 10 minus 9, we can't actually write out a number. And what we're finally going to get is going to be our final answer of a 1 square root of 2 minus 3. And we don't really actually have to write the 1, but just for the purposes of demonstration, we write it this time, okay? So sometimes these things may have a little bit um, more going on in the other ones, because you need to simplify first before you do anything, and then you're going to add and subtract. We've got a few more examples. I'll do maybe 1 or 2 more, and then I'll release you all. Actually, no, this is 3. We only got 2 more problems. I don't know. I want to save plenty of problems for you all to get practice in. So you all go ahead and start practicing these next ones, questions 4 and 5. And if you get stuck on them, come back to the Zoom chat. Let me know. Once you've gotten done with 4 and 5, go ahead and start working on those IXLs. And make sure you leave a little summary for what part you found tricky. And if you found it tricky, but you ended up working through it, write out what you did to work through it and what your thought process was for that. All right. So once again, go ahead and get going on questions 4 and 5. Once you finish those, finish up your summary, work on those IXLs after that. And if you run into trouble or you can't figure it out, come back to the Zoom chat, let me know, and I'll give you as much help as I can. All right.